been incredibly fortunate in the time I've spent in the toy industry to have worked with pretty much all of the major brands and seen how dedicated fan bases can be. And I can tell you, completely unbiased, the Masters of the Universe fan base slash Princess of Power is unlike any other. The dedication, the loyalty to the brand, the joy. Honestly, Star Wars, DC, Marvel, I've worked with all the top brands, but over and over again, Motu fans tend to be the ones that really rise up. They support the product. I mean, gosh, the brand has had more, if you will, sort of like dead years than almost any other. And that's actually kind of getting to the point that the fact that Masters of the Universe is so beloved by its fan base, but the fact that it has had more failures than successes is sort of a hard pill for a lot of the fan base to swallow. If you're not up on all of it, besides the YouTube videos, there's a great book that Roger Sweet wrote. He's one of the co-creators of He-Man back in the early 80s. He was actually the person who came up with the name, as well as the concept that it was going to be a bulked up hero, if you will. And you can read a lot about it in his book, The Rise and Fall of a $1 billion Idea, because that's literally what happened. It was huge. It was bigger than Barbie and Hot Wheels in the 80s. And doing a man literally made of muscles, this is actually Roger Sweet, that co-creator, pointing this out. Well, that's what the 80s was all about. We had muscular heroes in the cinema. That's what protected us. That's what we looked up to. And a big reason for that was in the 80s we were involved in the Cold War. And there was a sort of, boogeyman out there in the sense of communism, and that, it was going to get us, and we needed to be protected. So it was understandable that the idea of muscle-bound heroes protecting us was comforting. I mean, heck, the missile program that was going to protect us was called Star Wars. It all comes together in pop culture. And as it was said, we needed a hero. Kids needed a hero too. And even though that hero was going to turn out to be Johnny Five in the beloved film Short Circuit Part 2, well, before Johnny Five could capture our hearts, it was He-Man. And his sales were great until they weren't. There was definitely a crash in the mid-'80s when too many secondary characters were produced, and the He-Man show was off the air in favor of She-Ra, and all of those factors kind of came together and defeated him. While he was the reigning king of the boys' toy aisle, by 1987 he was hanging up his sword, until he got it back. So what I want to talk about tonight is the first attempt to bring back Masters of the Universe after the initial fall, and that was through this character here, Dare, the son of He-Man. Alright, if you don't know what I'm talking about, or are thinking of a different version of Dare, that's not totally off the table. There were multiple versions. The one that most people are familiar with is the version from the late 80s, where He-Man has defeated Skeletor, and now his son, Dare, basically takes over. And Dare is the adopted son of He-Man, and he rides around on a giant cat and has a transforming bird, has Orko as a buddy, wears a harness, and is, He-Man's son incarnate, even though he's adopted. The original version, predating this, was the biological son of He-Man, and that's this character here. Now, the only time a toy has been made of this was in the Classics line, which was an homage or an odd nod to this sort of long-lost storyline. And the son of He-Man, of course, was pitted against the son of Skeletor. So that's him here, Skeleteen. Dun, dun, dun. Yes, if he looks like a rejected design from the 80s, you're not far off, because that's literally what he was. And in their original show, live-action versions of both of their daddies, so Skeletor and He-Man, were going to show up to give advice to their kids who were off fighting in outer space. It was going to be kind of like that Super Mario Power Hour where live-action versions would show up and then the cartoon would roll, so there'd be cutbacks between them. Well, the concept of Dare, or rather the look of him, might be familiar to long-term He-Man fans, especially looking at those blue pants, that belt, and that armor. While it was used in the Dare action figure, it was originally, well, I guess for classics purposes, from New Adventures He-Man. And there's a reason for that. So, New Adventures was a concept of bringing He-Man into outer space that was literally the repercussions of the original Dare, Son of He-Man concept. When it fell apart, it became New Adventures. So looking at the design work for He-Man for the New Adventures, there were 3 basic looks, 2 harnesses, and then the full chest armor with helmet. This was meant to be his definitive look, and that's because this literally was the look created for his son, Dare, in the original pitch book. This design was just labeled Dare, son of He-Man. And then when that show concept didn't go forward, the design was picked up and just renamed He-Man, and it became New Adventures. Where originally it was his son, Dare versus Skeleteen in outer space, New Adventures just became He-Man and Skeletor from outer space. But the design work that went into creating the Son of He-Man and Son of Skeletor literally just became the designs for New Adventures. So the armor that was silver was just painted gold. And Skeleteen, who, again, totally get why you think he looks like a rejected version of something from the 80s, he was. So the whole, biker spikes and long duster jacket, I know Dennis Reynolds would be impressed, and the skull mask with the mohawk. I mean, come on, it doesn't get more 80s than that. Well, you can see that look wound up becoming part of Skeletor's looks for New Adventures. I mean, we'll actually get into it more in a moment, but there were direct design cues picked up from Skeleteen that were incorporated. And that's because in the toy industry, the concept of wash, dry, fold, repeat, or, just take a process and repeat it, is extremely common because so much work goes into making a toy and getting it to shelf. And about 50% of the time, this doesn't happen. Like this big Jim figure Iron Jaw from the 70s. So much work went into this, but unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, it never shipped, or never really went into full production. It only showed up in the Mattel catalog. And looking at this character, well, it may look familiar to you with the jaw and the replacement parts for the hand, for the arm. While it was clearly inspired by the James Bond character Jaw, and that's because that's what was going on in the 1970s, well, even though he never made it to market in the Big Jim line, Iron Jaw was then reused, recycled, and showed up as Trap Jaw. You can even see the similarity in the eyes and the eyebrows. He just now has a different hat on, and his skin color has changed. But same concept, from a toy line that didn't, or a toy that didn't ship, to one that did, reusing a feature that had been already developed. So same thing. Here we have Battle Blade Skeletor from New Adventures, and you can see his look is very similar to the look that was designed for Skeleteen. Even the fact that he has a ponytail in the back of his head, which is very odd because Skeletor never has hair, ever. And that's because his son, Skeleteen, did. It was part of his mask, that growing out, from it, but that was part of his design. So all of this tech work, all the biker work, and yes, that big ponytail was kept because the design work for Skeleteen was already done, and like other things, like Iron Jaw and many, many, many countless other examples, no one wants to throw out the baby with the bathwater. So much work goes into these things that why just start over when you have a design that almost made it to market, but for one reason or another got changed. So recycle, reuse. Fortunately, we were blessed with classics, with having Axel as an artist, and he was able to look at the vintage art and then sort of update it for how the character would look if he had a hypothetical classics figure, and so we could use him in the mini-comics. I did bring the Bible to San Diego Comic-Con, and you can read about that on He-Man.org. Unfortunately, when I left the Bible at Mattel, after I left the company, it got swept up in sort of a mass cleanup, and I found out months later it was thrown away. I was crushed. But you can also see these images from one of my fan panels where showing Icarius, the New Adventures character from the original Son of He-Man Bible. All the characters for New Adventures were there. They were just the cast for Son of He-Man. So we brought both Son of He-Man and Son of Skeletor into the classics world through the mini-comics. First, we took a look at the Son of Skeletor. He was brought in issue 4, shown as the biological son of Keldor and Evelyn. You can notice that his skin color is sort of between the two of them. And then he grows up to become a warlord, bent on avenging his father, who he feels had his throne unfairly stolen from him, which kind of he did, if you read the Origin of Skeletor and are aware of the whole, Firstborn issue. Skeleteen then later shows up as a member of the Unnamed Ones Revenge Squad, or Doom Gang, I think we called them, along with an older Jitsu and a Demo Man, and I guess different parts of Multibot and Modulock smashed together, again, showing time had passed. And then we see Skeleteen later on hanging out with his mother, aged Evelyn, on Droom, the moon of Eternia. You will notice, especially based around the ears, if you'll notice that's a mask. Here you see a rare picture of Skeleteen with the mask under his arm and what he looks like. So yes, he does not have a skull face like his father because he's not combined with a demon. And as hokey as the character is, wow, he has really risen to sort of a cult status with some He-Man fans. There's a lot of fan art that shows up, like a surprisingly lot amount for a character that never made it out into a show, never made it out into a toy line, just showed up in a few of the Motu Classics mini comics. But the whole idea of, moving the brand forward to what was originally planned to be the sequel to, the Filmation and the original line, there's even custom figures that have shown, what he could have looked like had he been in the Classics line. And believe me, I wish we had gotten to him because he really was showing up to be a very important character to the lore. His real name, by the way, is Dion, D-E-O-N, not Keldon. I think this is an unofficial fan bio, but there was a bio written for him. Just unfortunately didn't get published because the figure was never made because the line ended. But yeah, que sera. He would have been a great figure, I think. And we did get to Dare, which was actually one of the final figures. And that version was also meant to pay homage to the other version of Dare, the adopted son, the blonde-haired version. And we included this vest as an alternative look where you could put it on the Dare body, or hopefully if you had the Vicron figure, you could do the swap out. And then after we had reintroduced Skeleteen in a few issues, we finally did get to introducing Dare as the biological son of He-Man and Teela. He was fathered before He-Man had to leave for outer space, and no, He-Man was not a absentee dad. He was a soldier fighting a war. Any soldier who goes off and fights a war, like, back in the olden times, that happened all the time. So he does, though, return from outer space and meets up with Dare, and that sets up the next stage of the brand and the whole idea of moving the brand forward. And it's sort of the Batman Beyond phase of Motu, where King He-Man is overlooking and Dare is the main character fighting against Skeleteen and, all sorts of other baddies and stuff like that. So, yeah, no concept goes left undug. And if you like this video, please do share it with others. It's the best way to show support for this channel. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys in the next one.